Thanks everyone for joining today. The talk today is how to get the most out of your gap year. And we are joined by Zoe, who's coming to us from London right now. That's why it's light outside.
Yes.
Thanks for joining, Zoe. She's an alumna from the Chengdu batch, which took place last summer. And my name's Alan. I'm the general manager at Wagon Chengdu. And prior to that, I was a college admissions officer for UC Berkeley, and I've helped quite a lot of people not only transition careers, but get into top schools. And I've worked with lots of students like Zoe throughout my last 10 years in the education industry. So today, and that's a little bit about us. Zoe's now doing her master's in finance and economics at the London School of Economics. She just started last week.
Yes.
And before that did her bachelor's in econ and finance. And in between her last year of school, or right before her last year of school, she joined us in Chengdu to actually do a full stack coding bootcamp.
Yep.
And so tonight, if you guys are wondering, and maybe you joined because you're considering taking a gap year, or maybe you're considering doing something really meaningful in between, when you have a break in your studies, we've got a good webinar for you. So I'm going to be talking about what are the pros and cons of taking a gap year. Then we'll talk about how you can combine technology with your academic interest or major, especially if you're coming from a finance or economics background. So Zoe's got that finance and econ both at the bachelor and master's level. So we'll talk about how do you combine your interest, even if it's not tech related, with technology. Then she'll share a little bit about what it was like in the coding bootcamp, that experience that she had, and then a few tips on how you can prepare for a productive and rewarding gap year. So this is the quick rundown. I'll do a little intro. I'll take about 10 minutes to kind of go over my suggestions, the pros and cons, some tips, and then we'll just have a casual conversation with Zoe talking about the bootcamp experience, the way she's combined her tech skills, her new tech skills with her studies in finance and econ, and then we'll take questions from the audience. And then also we did have a little contest that we ran for people who shared the event on their moments. And we'll be announcing the winner of that contest at the end of the program today. So in about an hour. So stick around till the end. And a little bit about the Wagon for those of you that don't know who we are. We are a coding school that provides students with the skills that they need to future-proof their career. So we started in 2014 in Paris originally. We've spread to 40 cities, including Shanghai, Chengdu, and Shenzhen in mainland China. We're also in cities like London, Berlin, Tokyo, Melbourne, and we've had over 8,000 students do our boot camps. We've just launched a data science bootcamp, and prior to that, we had a full stack bootcamp. And we are very focused on practice and product and picking up practical skills. We'll talk about that in the call and or in the conversation. And so our students have built thousands of products, tech products, and we've actually had almost 300 startups at last count, which have come out of our programs. And about 50 of them have raised over 100,000 euros, some of them as high as 10 million euros. So we're really not just teaching you how to code, but teaching you how to apply that and solve real world problems. And one thing that's different about us from, say, a regular academic program, which we will discuss later as well, is that we're really focused on having students build things. You're not going to sit in theory class like a traditional computer science or tech program or academic program. We're going to teach you real world skills that you'll be able to apply in the workforce. And our students trust us, and the best companies and universities trust us as well. So we've had students graduate from our programs around the world and go work for top technology companies, also top consulting companies. And our students have used our program just like Zoe did, as a way to actually boost their resume so they can, apply it to their studies, whether that was at the undergraduate level or master's level. So we've got students all over the world. And so basically starting off, why are we here today? Well, it's been a crazy 2020. I'm sure we've all been affected by 2020, and that's kind of what has put us into the situation where a lot of students and even adults and young professionals who had their plan for the year starting in January, we were all excited. And then, of course, the virus breaks out in February. By March, spring break has been canceled for a lot of students. Countries go into lockdown. And now, come August and September, our lives have been completely turned around. So for a lot of students, it meant semesters were cut short, borders were closed. For me personally, I've actually been stuck outside of China for the last 7 months. I know a lot of students who either had to stay in the country where they were studying and not come home, or they came home and now they can't go back to their country. Some students and professionals have had jobs canceled, been laid off, have had internships canceled. And now a lot of people, especially international students, are considering, should I do a semester online or a year completely online, in a different time zone? Or should I take a gap year? And should I try and do something a little bit different this year? And that's kind of brought us to this conversation today, which is basically that, a gap year can be a blessing in disguise. From my experience, it's an opportunity for students to gain practical skills, to boost your resume. So during this time, students are able to actually do things they wouldn't normally be able to do during the year, like take an internship, they can volunteer, they can do a coding bootcamp. And this is going to give them a lot of practical skills that they might only get during the summers or when they get real world experience after they graduate. Another pro of a gap year is actually getting this unique real world experience that can help you discover and understand your interests. When you're studying, you're learning a lot of theoretical things, you're really focused on your major. You don't have this opportunity to have real world experience with in the workforce. And that's one thing that now, jobs are looking for that experience. That's something that even for me and for our team, when we're hiring interns, anything you can show, or recent graduates, any practical knowledge that you have, any real world experience that you can show that you've worked in a company will be very helpful when compared to a candidate that has no real world experience. Also, another opportunity because of a gap year is you can start building a professional network that will be very helpful in the future. This is something that you don't realize until you're like me and you've got 10 years of work experience. You don't realize how valuable those little relationships that you had at the time, how valuable those can be later in your career. What may have been a colleague or your manager can actually, turn out to be somebody who will get you your next position. Maybe not now, maybe not in 5 years, but, later on down the line, you actually might be able to leverage this professional network. And that's something that you can definitely start building during a gap year, and something you should always be building as a young professional. And there are some additional pros to taking a gap year, especially at this time for some people that are considering, should I do, university online without being able to go to campus? Well, you can save that tuition money that you would use, for on-campus studies, save that. So that for a time when the pandemic's over, you can go back to campus, because university, especially undergraduate, for so many students, one of the reasons why we go to an undergraduate school abroad is for that on-campus experience. We want to be immersed in the campus culture. We want to be immersed in the local culture. We want to, go to those parties and go to the job recruitment fairs. We want to form those relationships with professors. And if you don't have that in your college experience, then it really gets rid of a lot of the value of going through that experience. So if you instead take a gap year, you can save your tuition money and then go back to school later when the pandemic's over. Another thing that students may not think about is that if you complete your studies now at this time, you're going to graduate into a pretty bad job market, especially if you don't have practical experience and you don't have the right skill sets. You don't want to graduate right now in the middle of a pandemic when a lot of companies, even tech companies, are laying off people, and where the competition for entry-level jobs is really, really fierce. I've had friends in a variety of industries who are now furloughed, or their companies are laying people off. This is quite serious. And for me, I graduated from university in 2010. People 1 year above me and 2 years above me, I remember in 2008, 2009, a lot of them, I went to Yale for undergraduate. A lot of people would go into finance and consulting. And of course, the economy crashed in 2008. And a lot of those people who had really good jobs, they ended up being out of work. And a lot of those people either, went back to school, did their, law degree, or did a master's, did an MBA, because it was much safer to actually be in school than to be trying to get an entry-level job, at that time. So if you take your time to complete your degree, you may come out in a better job market. And then of course you can have fun, make friends, and ride out the virus. The virus will overcome this eventually. It probably won't be until, next summer, but that will give you hopefully, a year off, ride out the virus, have fun, make friends, and, then get back on track. I do hear sometimes from students, they do have concerns with taking a gap year, especially before this. It wasn't a common thing, at least for students studying in the US. I know some students in the UK and Europe, they take a gap year and they'll usually travel. But concerns from most of the students that I used to work with was really that, it looks bad to take a year off. Why would I take a year off? Which it doesn't actually, it can actually improve how it looks on your resume. What about my friends? They're concerned about, they might miss the social life of, they're gonna end up 1 year behind a lot of their friends, which, to be honest, it can be a positive thing that you actually have the opportunity to make more friends from the class below you or the years below you, and extend that social life. But my parents may not, think it's a good idea for me to do that. I think that comes down to how you actually frame this to your parents. If you do want to take a gap year, I'm going to actually have a better resume that can help me get a job later. And then some people might say, I don't really have a choice. I have to complete this, my 4 years and 4 years of study, or whatever it may be. But that's not true. You do have the choice to mold your own studies, and, it is up to you what you do. So when I was thinking about what are some drawbacks to actually taking a gap year, I couldn't find many, actually. The biggest one would be that, okay, it does add a semester or a year to your overall plans, to what you thought would be your 4 years in university, or 3 years in university is now going to become 4 or 5 years. But like I said, that doesn't have to be a bad thing. I think that can actually be a good thing when you're graduating into a better job market with a year of practical experience under your belt. Another bad thing is it can be a waste of time if you don't plan well. You want to make sure it's planned out very well, that you have your goals, what you want to achieve, what you want to learn. And I couldn't think of any other cons, to be honest, any drawbacks to actually doing a gap year. As somebody who's been graduated from university for 10 years, I can tell you, you're gonna have a job for like the rest of your life. There's no need to rush out of university. So take your time, take a gap year. I wish I would have actually done one, because it allows you to explore more about yourself, your interests, and build those skills. So just a few tips before we get into our chat with Zoe. To make the most out of it, you really need to plan it out. So know what you want to accomplish, Make sure you apply for opportunities early, and make sure you also set SMART goals. If you don't know what SMART goals are, go ahead and Google that. SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. I think the specific, measurable, and time bound are really important, because if you say, oh, I want to learn how to code, well, that's not so specific and that's not so time bound. But if you say, I want to learn data science so that I can, get a job as a data analyst, get an internship as a data analyst by spring 2021. You've set something very specific. I want to learn data science so that I can get a job, and I want to do that by 2021. If you are planning to work with a agency or to go through an organization that helps you plan out your job or internship or program, which there are a lot out there, there's a lot of different agencies that will help you plan that, or a lot of different study or gap year opportunities, especially when it comes to volunteer work or internships. Make sure you do your research, make sure you talk to past participants, and search for reviews about that. You want to make sure that you do something reputable, that you don't just take an internship just for the sake of having one. Find a really good opportunity, find a really good program, and do your research. And one thing that you should do throughout your gap year, and not just in your gap year, but as a professional, as a young professional, and any type of professional, is you really need to reflect throughout your professional experiences, and you need to document them. These documentations of your experience can actually go a long way in your career. So if you look at my LinkedIn, if you search for me, Alan Sanchez, you'll see that every few months I write an article about what I've been doing in my professional life. I've written about, opening a coding bootcamp in China. I've written about how I would combine Chinese characteristics with technology to, be more innovative. So every few months, I'll make it a point to actually document what I've been working on, what I've learned, and share that around in my network. And just based off of those posts, I get opportunities, I get people who want to join our programs. I can't tell you how many times those articles have actually been referenced in conversations, that the reason why somebody chose to join our program was because they saw this article. So document that. It's going to help you guys in your professional career, especially as a young professional where you are trying to stand out, because you don't have much experience. Some other tips: don't be afraid to try something new or unrelated to your major. It's an opportunity to get out of your comfort zone, socially, professionally, and to try something different, and make friends with other older professionals. So if you're doing a 3-month internship, make sure that you come away with 1 or 2 people that can write you a recommendation on LinkedIn, even if it's just something really short, where they can say, yeah, they were a good worker, they were a really good teammate, and share some positive things that you did in your internship. And like I said, those networks will come in handy later. So some opportunities, some things you could do, a coding bootcamp plus an internship. That's what we help students do. You can find an internship, of course, just an old-fashioned way of applying. There's online ones these days. There's companies that can help you find those. And if you're taking a whole year, I would suggest do 1 or 2 internships of minimums 3 months each. If you can do something a little bit longer, that would be nice as well. But we have interns at Wagon all year round. We're taking interns, actually. We have at least 1 right now. Structured volunteer work. This can be through a volunteer organization, and volunteer work doesn't have to mean, helping underprivileged children learn how to read. It can actually mean helping an organization on their business strategy. It can mean helping build an app for an organization. It can mean doing data analytics and, building processes for an organization. So in these volunteer, a lot of nonprofits actually need smart, hardworking people to come in and help them with their business. So don't think of volunteer work only as helping underprivileged people, but think of it as learning real skills to help a nonprofit. And then nowadays there's so many online courses and you can combine that with an independent research project that you want to do. So don't just think outside of the box when it comes to the gap year. And Zoe did not do a gap year actually, but she did use her break wisely, as many of our students do who have done a gap year. The program that she did was a 9-week program that would actually fit nicely in the course of a semester. So our next one starts in October in Shanghai or remotely through our Shenzhen campus. And this is what Zoe worked on and what we'll be actually talking about, which was the 9-week program where she learned the foundations of, first of all, did prep work, about 40 hours of prep work, learned the foundations of programming, basically backend, learned how to do design, front-end development, build an app, and then she and her team actually pitched a product that we'll talk about as well. And so getting to the main event tonight, and if you do have questions throughout, save them for the end. We'll have a Q&A, but now we can get to talking with Zoe. And here are some pictures of her boot camp just to bring up some memories from last year. And yeah, so I want to get started with just a little bit about your background at the time. So what were you doing, about a year and a few months ago, a year and a half ago when we first started talking, and what got you interested in doing a coding bootcamp?
So at the time, I just finished my sophomore year, which is penultimate year in the UK. And I was really actively looking for an internship during my whole sophomore year. But I didn't get into anything that I actually really want. It was really painful period for me, and I was just started to think, well, at this stage, what do I actually need to acquire as a new skill that would help me get a job or whatever, realize my full potential in the future. So it was really random. I just get onto Google, I searched for coding bootcamp, and there it is, Wagon. And at the time, I was being like, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to take the interview. I'm going to see how it goes. And I'm definitely going to go for it.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Nice. And then so tell us a little bit about what that experience was like. And also, you weren't originally you're not from Chengdu, but you did come to Chengdu to do the boot camp. And here's from there. If you had to summarize your experience in a few words, how would you summarize your bootcamp experience?
So first of all, it's obviously very, very intense because you gotta probably learn 2 years knowledge of usually that you would do in a university for computer science in 9 weeks. So first of all, very, very intense. You gotta be prepared for that, mentally prepared and physically prepared as well. Second, for me, it was really mind-changing because I actually could realize and see how I actually thought about things differently. Because in coding, especially in backend, you would realize you would have this thought process. For example, you would get into problems new problems that's really sophisticated or difficult for you in the beginning. And I learned how to dissect a big sophisticated problem into smaller ones. And in coding, you can do pseudocode to do problems step by steps. That really helped me in later studies or life to deal with problems and difficulties. Because at the time, things could be really overwhelming for you or for us, but you need to just dissect problems, have a good mental set, and doing things. And also the last thing is I actually changed me socially, because I used to be really kind of introvert in a way, but after the boot camp I realized there's actually no need for you to be introvert. You can just be out there, be talking to people, and learn from them, learn from their backgrounds. And it's actually fun to be talking to people and socializing with them. and learning from them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, maybe if you can elaborate like on that last point, how the boot camp actually made you be a little bit more social and actually connect with people.
So just in terms of connection, I came from a finance and economics educational background, and there was this classmate called John. He used to, so he graduated from Hong Kong Technology University in economics as well, and he did a economics master in UCL in the UK. And after that, he's been working in Bloomberg. He's been working the Central Bank of Hong Kong as a macroeconomist for like almost 10 years. And yes, I talked to him a lot about career choices, about education choices, and about why he came to the boot camp. So it was a really good connection that I was really grateful for at the time. And also like a lot of other connections for like, we have classmates from Italy, from the UK, from Vietnam, Russia. Yeah, so people, Singapore as well. There were entrepreneurs, there were people working in tech already, there were people working education. So it's super fun to know and to know people and their background, and also why they want to do coding from different backgrounds. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I guess coming from academic studies and then going into also I know you've had some internships in the past and then doing the boot camp. How would you compare this type of experience with an academic one or with an internship?
I think for an internship, especially if you got into like a really big multinational firm, what they do is they train you, and you would probably do like really repetitive work throughout the 2 months or 3 months. Because I have friends like who goes to HSBC in London for like finance internships, and yeah, so it actually could be boring, to be perfectly honest. But for this coding bootcamp, personally speaking, like it was so interesting for me, even though before taking it, I thought I might not be like that good enough in logical thinking, like coding. It was like always some mysterious topic. Like you probably would think you're not smart enough to get into it. But like the whole Wagon actually made it so interesting and engaging to learn and motivating you all the time. Not giving up, because it could be really tough, especially in the first 3 weeks. But just if you're prepared, there always going to be support for you there, and there are going to be motivating classmates as well to motivate to learn. Yeah.
Got it. And then I guess throughout the program, how did you kind of better understand yourself and your interests? I guess it could be either like academically or professionally. How did this help you kind of better understand yourself?
Right. So one thing I think, if you come from like an economics or finance background, you would think you either just work in financial services or otherwise. But I think that's obviously not the case anymore. Not even like data science or coding. It's like data analytics. It has almost come into every aspect into our life, in every industries, in either marketing, in finance, in retail. So it's actually a skill that you would need to acquire or have the basic understanding for, no matter where you work or what kind of organizations you work for. So personally speaking, I would say I would probably work for intersection of finance and tech in the future. Maybe like, because in finance especially, there's huge growing really promising area which is fintech. Yeah.
Got it. And then Yeah, if you could talk a little bit more about like that intersection with finance and econ, especially kind of after you finished the boot camp, you went back for your final year. And I think we had a conversation before, and I think you were talking about like how you applied what you learned to finance and econ. Yeah, if you could talk a little bit about like, even though you weren't in a tech major, how did you use those skills or combine them with your interests, especially in the academic setting?
Right. So especially in academic setting, I don't know if any of the participants doing economics right now or finance, because especially for economics, at the end of the day, you have to learn coding because when it comes to like econometrics, which has a lot of thing to do with statistics, you would have to know how to use like coding language like Stata or SPSS to do like analysis with economics data, do like regression, using regression to kind of predict the future. But it's not that complicated once you know how to do the basic stuff. It's actually really handy. And also for that, for finance as well, as you know, there are actually a lot of people working in like as a quant, which is like using finance knowledge and really advanced computer science knowledge to uh, build financial models, to do stock trading or whatever. But if you were doing a degree, you would need to learn coding at some point. And if your university degree doesn't equip you with that coding skills, it could be really like hard or scary to get into that like really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, have you already like used your skills in yeah either internships or at school in your studies?
Yeah, in my studies, especially in my final year, I suddenly have like those two coding modules, I would say, which is about econometrics and quantitative finance. And a lot of people in my class, they have never get into coding before. So it was like, it could be really tough. But for me, it was like so handy because I learned Ruby on Rails during the bootcamp, which is an object-oriented programming language. And I picked up Python right after the bootcamp by doing this little course on data analytics. Python is also an object-oriented programming language. So, and the thing is, once you know one language, it would be really handy and convenient for you to pick up another. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's one thing that like some people are concerned about, like which language they learn. And you know, Python's really hot right now, but uh, as Zoe mentioned, like object-oriented programming is basically every major language that you've heard of, from C++ to Python and Java and Ruby on Rails. They're JavaScript. They're all object-oriented, so you can pick them up quite easily.
Yeah, to be fair, like just get yourself onto one language and after that you'll be sorted. Like you will have the motivation and basic knowledge to learn new ones. Like you don't even need like a teacher for you anymore. Google would be your teacher, Stack Overflow would be your teacher.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then so in your future, like either for the rest of your studies or for your career, how do you imagine like combining combining technology and finance? Does this factor into your goals in the future for career?
Yeah, definitely. So basically, even if you're applying for a position in investment banks, really big investment banks, even if you're applying for positions in mergers and acquisition, which is like companies taking smaller companies or like, yeah, like something like that. It's like a really big thing in investment banks. Even for that, they would ask people for Python skills because basically you need to have, for example, Excel skills or Python skills to deal with financial data, to build financial models. It has become such a an indispensable part of like the financial world. But used to maybe the stereotype is that you just need to learn finance knowledge, you just need to like hustle around with people, but that's not the case anymore. They would actually ask for Python knowledge, and if you don't have that, you would have a disadvantage.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so had you done any coding before you did the boot camp?
I tried to like learn something online, but yeah, like, but like it was like really shallow level, to be fair.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess for students like who have never done coding before, or people who've never done coding before, and they have had those kind of experiences where they try and do something online, or they feel like, oh, I may not be logical, or it's very mysterious, or have hesitations about learning to code. What would kind of your suggestions be, or how would you, yeah, what advice would you have for those people?
Yeah, so to be perfectly honest, I was in the same situation. I was like always not confident about this kind of area. I was like, oh, maybe I'm just not smart enough to pick up coding.
Mm-hmm.
But so basically, the program that I took is a full stack one, which would teach you about backend development and also front end design. And very surprisingly, I was actually so much more interested and good at backend developing, because I thought, yeah, because backend basically requires a lot more logical thinking, and I thought I was not good enough at logical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and a lot of the classmates, some of them would be, yeah, it would be tough for them to pick up backend, but some of them are extremely talented and interested in front end design, like web design and yeah, something like that. And I remember during the employer presentation during the last few weeks during the boot camp, so Steve, he told us, actually, even though given the fact that backend development is much more like maybe intellectually demanding for you as a person, but in the industry overall, being a front end developer is much more demanding right now in tech companies or in different sectors, because every retailer, every brand, every company, they would need someone to develop a nice interface, a nice website, a nice WeChat mini program to display their product, to interact with the users, the customers. Even if you have the best products in the world, if you don't have, in this internet age, like if you don't have a nice interface, who would actually want to know your products and buy them?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So if you're worried about logical thinking, don't be, because there's such a big world in the front end design. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure most of people would be really good at picking it up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of different opportunities in technology. And actually, we have a picture of your product there. Ask the crowd. So in the boot camp, of course, every student will join a team that builds a product and brings it to life. Yeah, I want to hear about your experience actually building that. What was that like? Where did the idea come from? And how is it to work on a team to actually accomplish that?
Yeah, so as you can see on the bottom right corner is like a screenshot of our WeChat mini program. And it was really fun because John, which is kind of like our team leader, he was saying like, okay, his girlfriend always asked him which dress to buy, which shoes to buy, and he's being like, I can't really decide as well. So he says, why don't we develop a mini program that asks for opinions? And what we did is that we developed this like A/B testing platform where users can post their questions and choices, for example, pictures of a dress. And yeah, so users can post questions and users can also vote on these questions to get opinions. And yeah, it was really interesting to have the idea, and we start developing it. I was mainly responsible for designing the database, and it was honestly from scratch, like from using the schema to design the database. But during the process, we got a lot of support, and also I learned a lot of new knowledge, which is not really included in the whole teaching package. Yeah, so I learned a lot during developing the products as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we got really lovely teammates working on front ends on the aesthetic aspect.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really demanding and enjoyable process to develop the program.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really satisfying to actually see that thing coming to be.
What was the most challenging part of actually building that program product?
I think, yeah, so I think during the last few days, those functions actually come into like the functions that we are meant to design actually works. But the thing is, like, it was kind of ugly, the whole thing. So our teammates, Alan and Usto, and also John, like even people working on a back end, we start to pick up a lot of front end design knowledge. We started to try to make the whole application as good looking as possible. Yeah, so that was kind of a bit of like difficult in the end.
Mm-hmm. And actually, I'm curious. I think I know the answer, but are you more interested in back-end or front-end development?
Me personally,
Yeah.
I'm much more interested in backend, even though it's difficult. Like especially when you get into like higher levels, it's gonna be difficult. But I really just enjoy the process of like having no knowledge about this thing at all to like be like, oh, yeah, because we have this teacher called Pavel, and from Shanghai. So he was like encouraging me all the time. He actually motivated me to doing so many things that I thought it was impossible for me to do.
Mm-hmm.
I grew so fast during the boot camp. Like honestly, like yeah.
Nice. And what would you say is like the most surprising thing about the whole experience, the whole process program?
Surprising thing is that I realized I actually could learn and grow that much, that fast in such a short time span. That's actually the most surprising thing for me, because I thought I'm just not that good. I'm just not that, capable. But like, you never know. If you're mentally prepared, especially when you're surrounded by really motivated people, by really supportive like teaching assistant and lecturers, it's just there's nothing you can't do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And if if people are considering, maybe they're considering a gap year, or maybe they're considering planning ahead for next summer, but I guess if you were considering a gap year, and I don't know your answer, maybe, but I'm curious to hear what it would be like. What would you prefer to take? If you were an undergraduate last year, the pandemic broke out, would you prefer to do an online university courses, or would you suggest the boot camp experience, or what would your advice be to
Yeah,
students?
so to be perfectly honest, I personally I wouldn't spend that much money on a like overseas degree online, considering the time zone, considering the social networks that you won't be having, like not like you won't be having the network, but you will have the network as high quality as you would have when you actually go to campus and study and meet people. But very luckily, my degree right now is mostly on campus, so that I will still go. But I think in the US and in many European countries, uh, everything is not that normal yet. And very lucky, especially in China, like everything's almost on track right now. In Shenzhen, in Shanghai, or in Chengdu, you would actually can just like go into the city and like do the boot camp. So it's like such a big privilege and advantage compared to people living in other countries, to be fair.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of all the questions that I have. It's already 8:20, so I guess we can open it up to see if there's any questions from the audience.